What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and as you can see, we have a really fun discussion here today. Another collaboration here, this time with Eric from Humm Baseball and Jim from BALCAP Sports. Two great guys, great YouTubers, but even better people, and this is going to be really fun, taking a look at basically a Hall of Fame roundtable, with the Hall of Fame voting looking like it's going to be coming out, I believe, Tuesday this upcoming week or so. It shouldn't be that long. Regardless of when it's happening, we want to get this out beforehand, and this has been in the works for really quite some time now, so I'm really happy it's out there now. But we're going to be sharing our picks, basically two players and a wild card pick, as well as to who we would like to see land on the ballot for the 2021 Hall of Fame and beyond. And yes, it does mean that these guys are necessarily going to get in. It's just sharing our thoughts on the pros and the cons and really doing a friendly debate, if you will. And we will also have the other segments on both Eric and Jim's channel, so if you guys are interested in seeing the full version, not just my picks, make sure to check out theirs. I'll have in the description down below, and their channel links, all that great stuff. I hope you guys are looking forward to this. I'm really excited for it, but enough of me talking, let's get right into it. All right, guys, the time has officially come. I know we've been trying to get this collab in for a while now, really the past month, I would say. And with everything leading up for the Hall of Fame for the MLB, it's about time that we get this in. So if you guys don't know already, here we have Jim again for BALCAP Sports. We've already done some things together this offseason. Say hello, Jim.
What's up, Tyler?
And then we also have Eric for the first time here on the channel, that being from Humm Baseball. Huge San Francisco Giants fan, great guy. Eric, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you. So we're going to be doing this segment, and we will also have the other parts of this segment for our Hall of Fame roundtable, which you can find on both Jim and Eric's channels. They both do great stuff there, so that way you can find out all of our thoughts. So I'm going to be sharing with you guys my picks, my two Hall of Famers I think are definitely worthy, or at least I have a fair argument to be said in regards to them making the Hall of Fame for this upcoming year or in the coming years. And then I also have one wild card pick that I'm sure all you Mets fans and probably just baseball fans overall are going to enjoy. They might have a better argument against it, but I'm going to try to do my best to sway them. So getting right into this now. Yeah, Jim, you know quite a bit, I would assume, about this man, being a former Toronto Blue Jay, you being a Blue Jays fan, that being in second baseman Jeff Kent. Jeff Kent, we all know, the journeyman, spent his MLB career from 1992 all the way to 2008, spending time with numerous teams, and 6 teams in total. He spent 4 years with the New York Mets in particular, from 92 to 96. And this guy's accolades really speak for themselves. He's a career 290 batting average. He has a 356 on base percentage, of 500 slugging, 377 home runs. So yes, he didn't hit the 500, but he has over 1,500 RBIs and 2,461 hits. He has a career 123 OPS, a 55.4 WAR, which is normally what they pin against him in regards to this voting. And he has 377 home runs, as I mentioned, which is most all time for a second baseman currently in the MLB. If you look at his numbers in regards to RBIs, 1,518 runs is batted in for his RBIs. That is third all in the second baseman for all the MLB thus far. If you look at 560 doubles, that is fourth most all time for second baseman. His 500 slugging is second best all time for second baseman. He was a 2000 NL MVP, as we know. He had a 334 batting average, 33 home runs, 125 RBIs, 162 OPS, and a 7.2 WAR. He's a 5-time All-Star and a 4-time Silver Slugger. One of the best second basemen to ever do it. So I want to know your initial thoughts on Jeff Kent. I think this has been a long time coming. This guy was originally eligible back in 2014, and as soon as 2019, most recent, I should say, he was just under 30% in regards to voting getting in. And we obviously know you need over 70% to get in. So what are your initial thoughts on Jeff Kent? And Jim, I'll start with you.
Jeff Kent's interesting, and the numbers, I feel like the numbers are there. The hard part is, and I guess he's just getting penalized for playing during the heart of the steroid era, which we've been talking about this with all of our the whole duration of this conversation, is that we're keeping guys out who we know did steroids, but guys who didn't do steroids and still performed well, we're not letting them in. And Jeff Kent performed well. He's getting close to the end. This is his 8th year, right? So he's only got a couple years left.
Yeah.
2,500 hits. The RBI for a second baseman, if you start looking positionally, he's one of the greatest second basemen to do it. Overall, his numbers stack up. We were talking about the RBI numbers, over 1,500 RBI. That is in the upper echelon of Hall of Famers. So it's you got me on there. I think Kent is deserving. Now, was he a first ballot? No. Second ballot, third ballot? No. But he's getting to the point where he should be getting, in my opinion, he should be getting a serious look. And I'm sure, Eric is our resident Giant fan. I'm sure you've got some good stuff to say about him because he had some good years in San Francisco.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. He used to be known as a pretty good defensive. I think nowadays they're looking at the advanced stats, but he was a guy who'd make some great plays, great diving plays. He was a decent defensive second baseman. But as far as offense, the dude was incredible. And he's got, for me, it's a borderline until you take into account that he got that MVP because he was the best player in the game, and and guess who his teammate was that year? Barry Bonds. He won the MVP over Barry Bonds. So this dude was absolutely awesome. And if you compare him to Ryan Sandberg, he's got more home runs, he's got a better batting average. A lot of his stats are better. I'm not saying he's better per se, but a lot of his stats, a lot of the numbers say he is. So I definitely think he's in. I think if Rhino's in, we're going to go by position. We're not going to compare him to an outfielder. We're going to compare him to other second basemen. I think this is a no-brainer. I think, and with the MVP, that's what puts it over the top for me. So I do think he gets in.
Unfortunately, I think, and Tyler, you may agree with this. We're going to get to a point where the clock is running out, and he's so far away. He may not get voted, and he may need a committee in like 5 years to get him in there.
Yeah, and that very well could be the most realistic route for him. I think the MVP is definitely helping that deciding factor, at least taking him to that next level, especially at the timing that he did it in his career, right in the heart of his prime, going into the new millennium. But also when you look at Kent's numbers here, like from all these numbers, just at least the actual numbers, we're talking homers, RBIs, and everything in between. This guy has been one of the best second basemen in all of MLB's history. When you're top 5 in all these categories, it's really hard for me, at least, to go against the argument that this guy isn't worthy. It is not an easy thing to do by any stretch of the imagination, as we know, him being a multi-time All-Star and Silver Slugger, as it is, just so consistent with his bat throughout his time. And he wasn't a long-time New York Met, but he had some really strong years with them, as we know, and just a very reliable player overall that I think at this point, even though, yes, he probably won't get it, realistically speaking, is definitely deserving of the discussion and to come in through a committee or whatever it may be. Because again, being top 5 in second base out of all of the MLB's history, it's not like the league just started yesterday. I think that's pretty impressive.
I agree.
Well, great. All right. So getting on to another guy that was also a New York Met. This one I feel a lot more strongly about than I do Jeff Kent. I do believe that Kent is deserving, but Billy Wagner really stands out to me. And when we first started talking about some potential players to discuss, Billy Wagner, his resume really speaks for itself in a different way. He's 6th year on the ballot as of 2020. He had 31.7% of the vote in 2020 as well, still far off. But when you look at Wagner's numbers, and he's in comparison to a lot of times, and the great one that being Mariano Rivera, he was right along with him, at least second best, obviously not being ahead of Rivera, but not far behind him in a lot of categories. And when you look at his numbers here, starting off his career in 1995 with the Astros and finishing off with the Braves in 2010, spent a total of 3 to 4 seasons with the Mets from 2006 to 2009, had 422 career saves, which is 6th most all-time in the MLB. When you look at his career 2.31 ERA, which is second best in the last 100 years to Mariano Rivera, with a minimum of 750 innings pitched. He had a career 187 adjusted ERA, which is second best in all MLB history to Rivera. The same thing, a minimum 750 innings pitched. A career 11.9 strikeouts per 9 innings, which is best in MLB history. It's better than Rivera's. Rivera's is right around 8 or so. And then when you look at his career, 0.998 WHIP. If he's second best in the MLB in history to Addy Joss, and he's a 7-time All-Star. Like, I mean, he's literally been one of the best relievers in all of the MLB's history. So the fact that he isn't in yet and isn't getting enough, at least to 50%, is pretty baffling, if you ask me. So let's start this time with Eric. What are your initial thoughts on Billy?
It's another one. It's another baffling case. Like you said, I mean, if you're going to put, and I'm not saying they're not deserving, you're going to put Bruce Sutter and Lee Smith and Goose Gossage, Eckersley, those guys, they're awesome. They deserve to get in. But now it's been established that elite closers get in, obviously. And this dude, what was his career ERA? It's 2.3?
2.3.
2.3 career? One season, that's an absolute, elite closer right there. 2.3 career ERA. And then his last year, 2010, he was he was awesome that season. If I remember right, he had an ERA down under 2 and like 30 plus saves. So he closed out his career on top, and he has a long. I mean, yeah, I don't know. They just see the name. I know his name doesn't pop, like some of the guys. He's a Billy Wagner. Well, do some research. Look at this guy's numbers. Look at his career, and I think most of those guys would vote for him. I think a lot of them, They just must not take their job very seriously. And just like, no, I don't know. Because if you do a little, I had to do some research too. I didn't know Billy Wagner doesn't pop in on something. I'm not sure. Once you look at the numbers, oh yeah, he's in.
Awesome. What about you?
I'm searching for reasons as to why he's in his 6th year and he's not closer. I can understand why he's not in yet, but why he isn't closer, why he's hanging out at 31%. Is it because there's no other lefty relievers, lefty closers that are in the Hall of Fame? And when they elect somebody, they want it to be like a Mariano Rivera type guy, because if you elect Billy Wagner, then you're saying he's the best left-handed reliever. Like, I'm trying to come up with reasons as to why he's not.
Because that would be a pretty idiotic reason, I would have to say.
Yeah.
If anything, it's more impressive because he's a lefty.
Yes, exactly. I'm with you. And then I'm looking at his postseason numbers. He got roughed up in the playoffs, but he didn't. It's not like he spent his whole career. It's not like he was in the playoffs his whole career, right? I mean, he was in there. He had 7 years. He was in 8 series. So he saw a fair amount, but it was still only 14 games that he played. It's not like he's got a 50-game track record in the playoffs with an ERA of 10. I mean, he's got that 10 ERA over 14 games. He struggled in the playoffs, but again, I don't think that's enough, because that's not enough in my opinion. That's not enough time in the postseason for that to keep him out. So I really, the saves, the K rate, I mean, just the number of strikeouts to be a reliever and to log over 1,000 strikeouts, that save number, that ERA number, I can see why he didn't get in these first couple years, but I don't understand why he's not getting close, because I do believe he's deserved, and I think he should be elected before we get to year 10. Billy Wagner should be elected based on everything that you just laid out. Hands down.
Yeah. No, I'm glad we're in agreement here, because again, I know Wagner wasn't like a all-time New York Met, for instance. Same thing with Kent, but these guys I thought would be a great thing tying in, and you helped as we started this discussion as well. But like Billy Wagner, especially being a southpaw as it is, like especially during the time where southpaws have only become more common, I would say, in baseball, especially over the past couple decades. Lefties are more welcoming in the MLB today like ever before. So to see him do what he did, especially during the 90s and then up until 2010, was just phenomenal. And that's such a consistent basis. Yes, you can knock him for having some poor playoff performances, but outside of that, really, what are you doing? Like, those numbers speak for themselves. The fact that he was an elite company with Mariano Rivera with numerous stats is telling of like, why are we even having this discussion still?
He was lights out for a decade. From 2001 to 2010, he was a shutdown closer. You don't see that in Major League Baseball. You see a guy rise up for a couple years and then that's it. You don't see that.
The biggest issues with relievers today, and granted, I know it's been a case with a lot of players throughout all of the MLB's history, but relievers today, especially that guys that become free agents that are big on the market, they are a roller coaster. It's like 1 year, all right, great, you have a sub-2 ERA. Next year, you spike up all the way to upwards of 5. Then you go back to 2, then it's a 5. It's like it's an on and off year every which way. This was not the case with Wagner. When you finish your career with a 2.31 ERA, enough said.
Yep. Yeah. And isn't it your career? Isn't it your career that matters? I mean, that's the bulk of your time. Your little tough playoff history. I mean, I don't understand.
Playoffs, I think, just add to the case, right? It shouldn't take away. It shouldn't take away from it. Yeah, it shouldn't take away from it. If you played a handful of games, it shouldn't take away from it. It just enhances your case if you're in the playoffs and you're elite.
Especially if you're going to allow players to get in the Hall of Fame when they don't win a World Series, or they never have any significant playoff experience. Mm-hmm. If they have little to none, then they still get in. How is this even an argument for a guy that at least had the ability to get some showdowns, even if they weren't all great? That's still impressive enough that he helped get them to the dance, or where they were trying to get to, at least in some type of playoff contention.
Yeah.
Great. There's guys like Ernie Banks never been in the playoffs.
Exactly.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, it's a head scratcher to say the least. But getting on to my wild card, my Mets fans, obviously you're gonna love this. You might even be in disagreement. I know this is definitely stretching it because this man is the captain himself and David Wright, and this is probably one that may very well be difficult to get him in outside of a committee type situation. But David Wright, during his prime from the early 2000s, really lean up to 2012, was one of the best players in all the MLB and one of the best third basemen for sure. But if you get on to his numbers, David Wright, he just retired over the past 2 years, as we know, the longtime captain for the Mets, the face of the franchise when there was not a lot of things to be happy about as a Mets fan during the early to late 2010s. But if you look at in just under 6,000 at-bats, he had a career 296 batting average, 242 home runs, just under 1,000 RBIs at 970, just under 200 stolen bases at 196, and the career 867 OPS. He amassed over 1,700 and I believe 77 hits in his career. And you look at his numbers, he's a 7-time All-Star, he's a 2-time Silver Slugger, he's a 2-time Gold Glover, and he's also the Wilson Team Defensive Player of the Year back in 2012, which was his last main year with the Mets before everything kind of started to derail, or at least not get where they were. Like, that was his peak. That was David. But then everything started to spiral down because of his very unfortunate back injuries, dealing with like spinal stenosis and having serious neck issues, which still are going to affect him from the time until he passes away. It's just an unfortunate situation that literally led him into retirement because he simply couldn't even swing. When he retired, like, he shouldn't have even been playing that game for the Mets when he came out against the Marlins. Like, it was amazing enough to see him playing when he did the past couple of years. But David Wright, during his prime, was on a historic pace, I would say, for the Mets, not just to be one of, if not the best Met of all time in a lot of aspects, but also one of the better third basemen in the MLB. So let's start off, I guess, this time with Jim. I know that this is a tough argument, especially because his resume does not go on for, say, 2 decades plus of, some elite play or, above average because of his injury woes. But what's your thoughts on David?
So, we talked about this during the portion, actually for both, when we were on Eric's side, we were talking about this with Andrew Jones, and on my side, we were talking about it with Todd Helton. These are guys that had just about a 9 or 10 year run where they were one of the greatest at their position. And that, in my opinion, is what I'm looking for. And I think that, it's going to sound like, if you're watching this, that we're just giving away Hall of Fame spots. And that's not I don't think that's what happened. I think we have some great compelling cases here for guys that should be in the Hall of Fame. Based on the fact that during that stretch, he was an all-star almost every year. Once he established himself, he was an all-star mainstay. He was putting up great numbers. I don't want to discount the fact that he got hurt and he couldn't finish his career. Sandy Koufax was only great for 6 years. The other years he was trash, and he retired at 30. I know Sandy Koufax, those 6 years were ultimate, right? It was the greatest, but it was 6 years. We got Sandy Koufax in for 6 years. That's it. This track that David Wright was on, because I look at it, let's say, where could he have finished? And you just kind of speculate. But let's look at the statistics. And I pulled it up. It sounds like I did a lot of prep on David Wright. I didn't, but I just pulled it up. 182 hits was his per 162 game average. So if he had played 162 games, his average was 182 hits. And I know this because I did this research for one of my other guys, that 182 for David Wright puts him ahead of a pace of Eddie Murray, Craig Biggio, Cal Ripken, Ricky Henderson, Carl Yastrzemski, Willie Mays. He had more hits per 182 than a bunch of guys that got to 3,000 hits. So that was his track. That's David Wright's track. If he can play a full career, he's a 3,000 hit guy. I'm good. David Wright should be in. I hate it though, because I can see them keeping him out, and I think that will be wrong. But I want David Wright in my Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because David Wright, he just injuries are tough because you don't want to hold it against him too much, but at the same time you gotta put up some numbers, you got to put up some bulk here, and you have a major league, a good strong major league career to be a Hall of Famer, and he's 1,777 hits, so a little short, 242 home runs, 296 career average. I mean, obviously, like you're saying, he did have a short period of time He was one of the best players in the game. He was a good Gold Glover, All-Star, several years in a row, got MVP votes, never won the MVP. So it's pretty close. I think he's one guy I would like to vote for, but he's one of those guys like, he'll get 10 spots. So if my 10 were taken up, he might get left off of a ballot, but I would definitely try to fit him in when I could. I do think he should be in, but he's not someone I'm going to be the first guy I'm going to write on my ballot. If I had unlimited votes, I would put him on there. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I think we can all agree David wouldn't be a first ballot.
Right.
There's no doubting that. But he's a guy that if you could get through a committee or something, I think that would be great. Because if you look at his span, especially from 2005 to 2012, as I already alluded to, every single season in there, but two exact, he had at least, looks like 25 home runs, and he had at least 100 RBIs in more seasons than not during that span. From that 7-type year span, especially where he had all those awards, all those accolades, he was just simply dominant. And he brought a breath of fresh air to a Mets team that really didn't have a lot going around him. They had that 2006 run, which just is still heartbreaking to this day. The Mets had their runs, and even in 2015, he still had a crucial impact while he was still really in the heart of those injuries. And those were still really eating away at him. And we didn't know the severity to an extent at that point in time. And really, especially after the World Series run in 2015, everything that's just continued to spiral downward, unfortunately. He's like, nothing is more of a class act than David. And I'm obviously saying that biasly as a Mets fan, but he just, the face of the franchise, the longtime captain. I don't even know when the Mets would announce a captain again, because he checked every single box, and it did not give that glove at third base was amazing. You had nothing to worry about. David Wright was what Nolan Arenado is to the Rockies. He was our Nolan Arenado, if you will. So that's just how I've always felt about David. And again, I know it would be a hard argument, a hard task to try to get him in, but by all means, I would try to do everything I possibly can. I just can't say enough good things about the man.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, and again, just looking at the Hall of Famers that are in here, and this is why I'm okay if you put David Wright in the Hall of Fame. I'm worried that he won't get in, because when you look at the Hall of Famers that are in there right now, they may have 2,500 hits, or maybe they got 300 home runs, but what they were able to do is they were able to play for 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years. And I kind of feel like I just don't feel like we should hold it against guys who can at least give us a decade, 10 years, or David Wright gave us pretty much 10 years of being the best third baseman in the National League, and I think that should be rewarded. Now, it stops abruptly, and again, when you're looking at all the guys, and this is why this is going to be his biggest uphill climb, is that all of these hitters that are in the Hall of Fame did it for really, it's almost like there's a box. They got to check that 15-year box, and if they can't do that, they're left out in the cold, which again, that's a shame, because guys like David Wright and Andrew Jones and Todd Helton end up getting left off. And I disagree with that.
Yeah, and to close this out, I just want to add too, it makes you think of players that have hit the Hall of Fame by only playing a decade or even just short, for instance. If you just have, say, a 7 to 10 year career and it's not even halted because of injuries, that's just strictly the career you had. Maybe it's depending on the time that you're playing or whatever. That's another factor to take into consideration. If you have a guy that, say, is in the Hall of Fame, but he really had great accolades the first decade, but he continued playing for maybe another 5 to 10 years, but had a little to nothing, but he still gets in, that's only further improvement. Okay, that maybe that this guy is worthy. Maybe he still would have been continuously on the track that he was had these injuries not halted him, because he was clearly in the direction of doing so. It's not like he had a gradual decline. It was pretty like smack in the face. Okay, this is happening. It's very unfortunate, but there's literally nothing we can do about it. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. This was really awesome. And for you guys that don't know, again, Jim and Eric, make sure to check out their segments where they will be sharing their thoughts on the Hall of Fame Roundtable, who they think is going to be their best picks between their two and their wild cards apiece. So make sure to check them out again on BALCAP Sports for Jim and for Humm Baby Baseball for Eric. And thank you both again so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun. I hope we do something again real soon. And guys, make sure to check it out. I'll have it in the description down below, the links, and also in the comment section. So thank you again, guys. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Jim. Any closing remarks? But I'll let you get out of here.
This was fun. Let's make this a yearly thing. Every year we'll kind of circle back. We'll do a Hall of Fame roundtable. The three of us. This was a lot of fun. We'll see where it goes. The voting's coming up soon.
Yeah, no, we will. I'm all for it though. Thank you again, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.